Hello, BookTube, and welcome to this week's Book to Film. And this is The Glass Key by Dashiell Hammett. It was published in book form in 1931 and preceded a serialization in Black Mask in 1930. And this is the 1942 film with Veronica Lake, Alan Ladd, Brian Donlevy, directed by Stuart Hessler. It was actually the second incarnation. There was a previous 1935 version with George Raft in Alan Ladd's character. I'm not sure if I've seen that, but we're going to be dealing with this one here. And this is on Arrow Academy Blu-ray. It's a gorgeous transfer. But let's get to the story. It's set in a town that has crime bosses, but their political crime boss. The main one is Madvig, but the story centers around his sort of right hand man, fixer, and best friend, Ned Beaumont. And the story opens up with we find out Ned is a gambler, um, and a bit of a raconteur, ladies' man to a certain extent, um, and he finds the body of the senator's son, and he knows that his boss, Madvig, is supporting the senator in elections, and he's also his boss Madvig is dating and wanting to marry the senator's um, daughter, Janet. And to complicate things, Madvig's daughter, Opal, has been seeing the deceased Taylor, Henry. So uh, Ned Beaumont is sort of suspicious, right? Well, he's, cautious, I should say. And because he knows there's no lost love between his boss Madvig and the deceased Taylor. So, but there's also other things that are happening. It's quite a complex plot. There's other things happening. There is a uh, not so much another. Well, there is another sort of mob boss type character, but one of the um, sort of his followers, Madvig's followers, brother is in prison, and he wants Madvig to spring him, and he doesn't quite do that. He doesn't want to put pressure on at this point anymore on the DA's office, that he basically has the whole town in his pocket, more or less. Um, and that sort of makes for a disgruntled following to a certain extent. So this guy goes because he wants his brother freed. He goes to another mob boss who helps him eliminate the witness to everything, to the murder that his brother had committed. So they kill his brother. Makes sense. Um, and but at the same time, there's a bit of other evidence, because he finds out that going back to Taylor's murder, that Ned, the body that he'd found, where the book opens up, he finds out that he was a gambler as well, but he owed a lot of money, and there's IOUs that have been sort of torn up by a bookie, and the bookie has fled. So he thinks that there is um, he thinks that that could be the reason why the bookie has done this, but the bookie has fled to New York, and there's also the fact that the Taylor's hat wasn't found, so he needs to find his hat. But he gets one of his hats from his sister Janet, who's as I said, seeing his boss Madvig. And he goes to New York City and to track him down, because he even like the bookie owes him some money. Um, but it turns out that he didn't do it, even though like he did plant the hat. He was gonna make evidence for this bookie, but it turns out that he didn't do it. Then we find out there is a witness to Madvig, Ned's boss, arguing, or at least speaking to Taylor at some point at that location on the street. Um, so this other rival mob boss, who Madvig is now sort of at war with and trying to squash him, grabs Ned and gives a whole bunch of money and says, like we with your information, we can publish this in the newspaper and squash Madvig. And he sort of goes along with a little bit, and he's trying, in essence, he's trying to sort of trap him. Um, and so, but then he refuses to do this, so he gets kidnapped and beaten repeatedly. And he tries to, like, as soon as he wakes up from being beaten unconscious, he goes for the door, and the guy grabs him, beats him again, beats him, just continually beats him. But he does eventually escape, and he gets into the um, hospital, because he's very badly beaten, almost beaten to death. And he warns Madvig that this is going on, that there is a witness that's saw him and everything. It's a bit of a complicated story, and because you got Madvig's daughter Opal, who's there, but at this time too, there's letters being sent around suggesting that Madvig actually killed Taylor Henry, the senator's son. And the prime suspect for sending these letters is the senator's daughter, who is actually seeing Madvig. So, and then, but his daughter as well is sort of mixed up. She thinks that he did it too, and this rival mob boss is sort of getting together with his daughter, Madvig's daughter, and they're going to try to concoct things to get rid of Madvig. And then eventually Madvig confesses to the murder. But he eventually, he is not the murderer, but Janet doesn't really like him, but she's doing it sort of for her father, the political connection there, and her father's corrupt as well. But I won't sort of spoil the I guess the full ending of who actually murdered this Taylor. Um, but let's just say that Ned Beaumont gets the girl in the end. He goes off with Janet Henry, and still being friends with his old boss Madvig. Um, it's a good story. And it's written in such a way is like there's no thoughts in it. It's in um, um, third person, but there's no thoughts, so you don't know the motivations from the characters that much. You just sort of got a documentary sort of view of everything and what is happening, and you have to piece it together, which is fine. The characters are a little more nuanced than in from what I remember. Too well, okay. I've read two other Dashiell Hammett books. Uh, Maltese Falcon. This was the last one that we did, and prior to that, I've read The Thin Man, which I'm going to be doing as well as part of this series because of the William Powell film. But anyway, I don't remember those two having the characters so nuanced and other depth, because they're sort of very pulpy type characters. Sam Spade. but nonetheless really enjoyable and really good. Uh, Sirens going here all the time. So yeah, so it's so that's interesting. But I didn't find, like, even though this is considered, I think, one of his best stories, I didn't quite find it as enjoyable as definitely Maltese Falcon. The characters didn't grab me as much, or nor the storyline, and the same as the Thin Man. And I'd have to read the Thin Man again because I might be clouded so much by the absolutely fabulous film with William Powell and Myrna Loy, and that's sort of clouding me with the with with the book. But yeah, it's a good solid book. Um, I might read it again someday because it is he is a very quick reader. I mean, a writer to read, so it might be something that's worth me reading again and seeing if I missed anything. Um, but yeah, it didn't grab me like the other two did, because when I first read the other two, I go, oh, I really like these. And since I'd reread the Maltese Falcon, I thoroughly, more so, enjoyed it the second time, and know that I will be reading that a third time. Now we get to the film in 1942. As I say, it was directed by Stuart Hessler, and the screenplay was by Jonathan Latimer. It starred Veronica Lake with the peekaboo hair. Um, and if you don't, you can sort of recognize her there if you've watched other old films, classic Hollywood. Alan Ladd, and Brian Donlevy. We've seen Alan Ladd and Brian Donlevy in, well, we've seen all three in films that I've done. Brian Donlevy, we've seen definitely in Beau Geste. Uh, Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake, we've seen in This Gun for Hire, which was based on Graham Greene's film, or book, sorry. Um, and it's, in essence, it's pretty. It keeps the sort of plot to a certain extent, but there are changes to the film. Um, for instance, he's no longer Ned Beaumont; he's Ed Beaumont, and I'm just sort of wonder why they did that. But it could be because, like, on the screen, if somebody says Ned, they may think Ed anyway. So let's just change it to Ed. Um, and Veronica Lake plays the senator's daughter, the beautiful daughter, Janet, who is quite repulsed actually by Don Levy's character, who plays Madvig. And there's a lot of looks between every time Alan Ladd's character, Ed Beaumont, gets together with her. There's a lot of looks, and he's it stands out a mile that she's quite repulsed by him, but she's doing it because for her father, who the senator, and to for the upcoming in the political backing of this. And instead of Opal being Madvig's daughter in the film, she is his sister, because Madvig is not that much. Well, she's young, but he's not sort of old enough. He's like playing, I guess, in his 30s, maybe a 40 at the most, but still possible to have had a daughter like that. But somehow they thought the dynamic might be better um, as um, as his as his sister. And they have Alan Ladd's character as being like he's very loyal to both of them, and he takes care of Opal, because she is messed up with this Taylor, the Janet's brother and son of the senator, who's a gambler and losing money. And he does find the body again, but nearby the house, his house. And where he isn't actually a character in the book, he actually is a character in the film. They bring him in because there's sort of, like when people are being interviewed or talking about what happened, you find out through dialogue and of uh, what happened on that day that he was killed. So they decided to instead have him as a character and embellish it a little bit, uh, which works fine, because it's sort of like, by the time they'll take the time to show or have the character talk about what he did, they would either need a flashback or just show it, just get it done. So it works in quite seamlessly. Um, and it's the character of, and it's noted in the commentary on here, which is a pretty good commentary. I had a few problems with it. The commentary is by Barry Forshaw, crime fiction and film expert. It says here, and it seems like, he gives his list of credits at the beginning, and he's written a lot of stuff on film noir and other crime film. So, but as I was saying, like he says that, Madvig's character Brian Donlevy, they make him a little more hard edged than he is in the book, um, and it's clear that uh, Ed is, Alan Ladd's character is really devoted to him, and they're good friends. In the book, it seems that he sort of, they don't give a huge history of their relationship, but it's as if he just showed up like a year or two before in the town from probably New York, where he had planned on going back because he was sort of finished with things there now. But in that's the other thing that was sort of strange about the book. They're supposed to be so devoted and friends, but only, it seems like it should be a friendship that is a lifelong friendship, that they were kids together or something, but it's a very short thing, and for him to be so devoted is not fully hard to believe, but less makes less sense. But they don't, as I say, they don't give the history of it. So you either can assume one thing, or you just assume, well, just because he just came from New York a couple of years doesn't mean that they knew each other. They didn't know each other, previously, but it's not mentioned. So it's up in the air. So it's a bit ambiguous there. So yeah, so they, and they change things around a little bit. There's no bookie that he goes to New York for, so that's all taken out, that storyline, and it's the rival mob boss that has the IOUs for him. So, and that works. You just eliminate one character and the side jaunt to New York, and it's a short film, so I have no problem with that. So the adaptation, I really have no problem with at all. It looks good. The film looks good. It's a good transfer, and there's some really really good scenes, and there's good acting. Like Alan Ladd, he never really was a great actor, and he even thought that, even though people did think he was good, but he was good at one thing. Like he says, when somebody says, "Oh, you did some good acting today," and he says, "Well, he gave a good look," and he was good at that. Like he could say a lot in a look and his facial expressions, which didn't need dialogue, and you could see that, especially the interaction between Veronica Lake and him. Um, the two characters work out really well because he's watching her looks in response to Madvig, excuse me, his boss, and he's interpreting correctly. uh but then he has these facial expressions, but that's more Alan Ladd, and it's always been that way. And they were a great team up. They did a number of films, like five, six, possibly five, I'm not sure how many. They did quite a few films together. um So yeah, and it has basically the same ending, but a little a little different. Like, the execution of it is a little different. So I won't spoil that. And definitely, Veronica Lake looks good. They always dress her in all these high fashion styles like they do in Hollywood. Um, and the only thing is that I thought the district attorney, they made him a bit of a more of a buffoon than he was in the book. I forget the actor's name, but he was a character actor on a lot of things. And he didn't seem like that much of like so sort of clueless buffoon, a bit of a comic character they did in the book, which is okay, because he's a bot. He's bought, and he's in the pocket of Madvig, uh, more or less, but he has to do other things as well. But he does sort of play ball, as you would say. So yeah, so it's a good film. As I say, the commentary is quite good because the actor does. I mean, the commentator doesn't go scene by scene, but he gives a lot of background to Dashiell Hammett. He gives a lot of background to all the actors and director and everything. There's one thing that it came up before with the Fritz Lang film. It's sort of the interpretations that people use for this time, and he's saying that the Madvig and Beaumont character, it's a homoerotic, um, relationship, and when he's getting beat up, it's a homoerotic relationship, and I'm going. But then he admits that, oh well, it's not really, it's not on the screen and it's not there, but it can be interpreted this. And then he's saying, like in the book, well, it's not there, but you can interpret it as this. And I'm going, well, you can throw out anything like that, and just because two male characters are friends and one's loyal to the other doesn't mean that they're in a homoerotic relationship. I don't sort of get that. So anytime, two men shake hands, that's a homoerotic relationship, and it's like, there's nothing that suggests this whatsoever in the stories, and it really floors me. And we get this, and it's like you might as well say, oh, they're actually lizards from outer space, pretending to be humans. Oh, but you can't. It's not really said in the film. It's not this, or in the book. It's not there. It's not there, and it's not hinted at. But you could interpret it as that. It's the same thing. It's to me, it's as absurd because there is nothing, that's written in it to say that oh, he gives him a loving look or something like that. There's nothing like that whatsoever. And I really, I don't know. It just seems that there's certain things in film criticism that is just you have to do now, because if there's you know two characters of a certain way, you have to interpret it this way, or you have to interpret it in, say, a feminist way or a certain way, and it's just like, well, interpret it as a bloody story. But anyway, that's a bit of a rant. But anyway, that I did enjoy it. I wasn't sure that I had actually seen The Glass Key before. But after I started watching it, I realized I had seen it. I had seen it, but it's not, like I say, it's not as good as this Gun for Hire or their other team ups, I don't think. And it partially has to do with maybe the director. Even though it's a competent film, it's a very competent film, and the director is more one of these sort of like workaday directors. He's given an assignment and he'll do it. Like he did some other big films, but he was just he never sort of went out of the box in a sense for a lot of directing ability. Uh, Definitely not like Charles Lawton in Night of the Hunter. There's nothing like that. This is very straightforward. It's very deadpan in that sense, and it is noir, and it is good for that. It is enjoyable because there is some good scenes, as I say, in the interaction between the characters, and I think a lot of people were going to see Veronica Lake, especially, and Alan Ladd. So that was the thing, and they're unlikely sort of. She was an unlikely sort of star in many ways. She was very well. She was short. She was like 4'10" or 11 to begin with. And that was partially why they teamed her up with Alan Ladd, because he wasn't short, but he was under 5'5", I think. So he was under the norm for a lot of actors. So they didn't want like a 5'8" woman for him, because they figured that wouldn't work. So they got somebody that was a little shorter, and actually he wore heels and stuff. To make his height more. And there's the jokes that he was other actors were into holes in the ground, so they'd be eye level with him. Um, but yeah, so it just they were teamed up together. But yes, Veronica Lake just was not the sort of Marilyn Monroe or Jane Russell type of the time, buxom and tall. She was very slight, and very alluring, even so. She had a tragic sort of, she had mental illness, and she eventually died, I think, in hospital. But her career sort of went off the rails. She drank a lot, um, and she was sort of estranged from her children. So yeah, she didn't do much after a certain time. She wrote an autobiography, a memoir, which I wouldn't mind getting. It would be something that would be interesting to read, because I am interested in this, um, this era. That's for sure. But yeah, no, it's a good film. 1942, as I say, and I wouldn't mind. Like, yeah, again, I don't think I've seen the George Raft version, 1935. I think it's 34 or 35. But like Maltese Falcon, there was versions made before. So at some point, as I say, I'm going to get and do the Thin Man, because that is a favorite of mine in the book. Uh, but these two, um, I think he wrote about five. Dashiell Hammett wrote about five novels, I think, um, and they're definitely worth reading. I've never read any of his short stories, which I'd like to see what they're like. But they are very pulpy, in a way. But him and Raymond Chandler were sort of, the biggies of pulp, and um, oh, there's a certain type of crime. I just can't think of it now, but a certain type of one that was being written, hard boiled crime. It's sort of very matter of fact, and Sam Spade is definitely like that. But you see, where Sam Spade is a bit two dimensional, Ned Beaumont here is, there's a lot more dimension to him, but you don't really know what is going on in his head or in the character's head. All you see is their actions and what they say, that tells you there's a little more to it. And so is Madvig as well. Um, all the characters are quite multifaceted here, where not so much in Maltese Falcon, which makes more depth, but as I said, maybe not as enjoyable at times. But anyway, that's where I'll end it, BookTube, and next week we will be doing Journey to the Center of the Earth, um, and that's the Jules Verne novel, which I will be going to start reading now. Take care, BookTube.